Hello and welcome to Shooting the Shit. It's another Monday. Yay, Shooting the Shit. Today, you might notice that Marisha is not here. Instead, we have the lovely Joanne Grant. Say hello to the boys and girls, Joanne.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, the cat's just in the litter tray scratching around, so I'm sorry about that. He's taken it literally, your title of your podcast.
Yes, no, that's all right. So we've got cats in the background having poos. We've got babies in the background, or not even in the background, in the foreground drinking milk and having poos. I don't think I've got anyone here who's having a poo.
You'll have to do it, Rachel.
No, I'll have to do it myself in my leggings. Never mind. Anyway, today on Shooting the Shit, we are talking about gaslighting. Gaslighting is one of those things that gets people all confused. So my husband Dali has been pondering what on earth gaslighting means for about 2 years now, and he can't get to the definition of it. So today we're going to talk about what is gaslighting, how does it manifest itself, what do people who are suffering from gaslighting, what are they subjected to, how does that impact on the workplace, and then is there anything that we can do to try and stop it? So first up, I have got some facts and figures for you. Well, facts and figures is a very, very loose description of what I've got. But in 2015, the Serious Crime Act was updated to include coercive control, and gaslighting was included in that. And gaslighting is essentially the act of making somebody think or feel that they are insane. So it's a behavior that erodes somebody's sense of self and erodes their sense of sanity. And it's basically things like, no, you're crazy, that never happened, or no, you're making that up, and making people doubt their own beliefs and their own lived experience. That's gaslighting. It comes from the 1938 film with Ingrid Bergman called Gaslight, in which she was subjected to gaslighting by a partner. So there's a kind of lot of hello orbital.
She's just giving giant burps.
Yeah. Oh, good on her. Well, is she going to projectile vomit into your face again, do you think?
Hope not.
Okay. Well, anyway, we're not here to talk about vomiting babies. So anyway, obviously this is a Facebook Live about feminism and business, and I do just want to get it out there right at the beginning that we are not saying that gaslighting is only something that is done to women by men, because you can be gaslit in relationships, you can be gaslit in friendships, you can be gaslit, as we're going to discuss, by the government and by bodies and obviously in the workplace and stuff. So obviously, we're talking about it today in the context of kind of women and business in the workplace, but anybody can experience gaslighting. So first of all, Joanne, what does gaslighting mean to you? If somebody says gaslighting, how do you understand it?
Well, to be honest, I don't think I'd heard of the term until about a couple of years ago when, I'm going to get the name of the show wrong, Westworld, not Westlife, that's something completely different. Westworld, do you know that show?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's based on the old sci-fi film. It was like a remake of it, wasn't it?
Yeah, so there was the series that was like so violent, particularly towards women, obviously within a sci-fi setting. But for those who don't know, it was basically in the future where you could go to this world and explore all your deepest, darkest fantasies, because all the people that inhabit it are basically AI. They're not real people. And, as it progresses, you realize that those not robots, but whatever they are, AIs, they sort of have their memory wiped. But as the show progressed, they had flashbacks. They started to have these memories. So to keep them under control, they're like continuously being gaslighted. That's how I learned about that term, because then there was an article about it that said Westworld is gaslighting at its worst type of thing. So that made me think, because it was like the people who were controlling these non-human individuals, like they'd sit with a very blank face looking woman who was being told, no, that never happened, and she was having these memories. So it was a real complex way to think about gaslighting, because them not being humans, but that introduced me to the term. Up until then, I know about sort of manipulative behavior, but gaslighting as its own thing, I'd never thought of it like that. And what is now defined of what is it, coercive control, it mainly makes me think of domestic abuse and the mental control, usually within a couple relationship, where I'm finding it really hard not just to come out and say the man and the woman, but whoever it is, the abuser would be like, you're no good, and they start to believe it, and that's why they stay. So that's a long answer, sorry there, but
well, that's good, but that's the thing, isn't it? So because we had domestic abuse, obviously, it's been around since the dawn of time, and we all know what that is. We all know it's one partner beating up the other one, and they've got black eyes, but they've walked into a door. That is what we typically think of when we say domestic abuse and domestic violence. But this is why they kind of readdressed, because there was that really famous court case, wasn't there, with that woman who said that her husband had never actually hit her, she killed him, and they had this big court case about it, and all the family was standing up for her, and it went to the High Court and stuff. But they were saying, although her husband never actually hit her, it was a really, really controlling and abusive relationship because of the coercive control. He made her think that she was worthless, that she had no value. He just through his actions and his words rather than his fists. It's still abuse. It's still domestic violence. It's just of a different nature. And that was when gaslighting then became a thing. So a lot of people have only heard about it really recently because it started coming through like this. But obviously, it's been going on for a long time. Hannah, what does gaslighting mean to you?
Well, I think I was going to mention that case, so you've kind of buggered my little...
sorry, well, go on.
Right.
You tell us
so
more
there was a
about
court case a few years ago. It's really recent, that case as well, that her conviction was overturned. She was convicted for his murder. She bashed his head in, didn't she? And good for her. And I think a lot of people...
She served a few years in prison, didn't she? It took the family and the solicitors quite a while to get her out.
Yeah, and I think that was probably, like you say, that was the tide turning for a lot of people to realise that there is actually a term for this and it's not okay. And what you thought was, someone just perhaps manipulating you a bit is an actual form of domestic violence. Well, not domestic violence, domestic abuse. But I think it is really important, like you said, to note that it doesn't just happen domestically. It happens in all walks of life. And I would say everybody has experienced it in one way or another. And I would also say, probably, if we're being totally honest, most people have tried it. No, I didn't say that. Don't be daft or something, however innocent you feel it might be, just to try and wheedle your way out of something that you probably shouldn't have done or said. Well, maybe this is just me now.
No, I know. I genuinely think, if I think back to behaviour, I mean, you know me, Hannah. I am the world's worst liar. If you ask me a direct lie, I will go bright red and I can't tell it. But of course, we've all had situations when we've been like, no, I didn't say that. No, that's not what I meant. No, you've exaggerated. You're making it up. That's human nature, isn't it? Joanne, own up. Have you done that?
Just trying to think. I'm not a very good liar. So yeah.
Like, Rachel, you're not a good liar, but you will argue black is white just to get your own way. And we all do it. And I am notoriously manipulative to try and get people to do what I want. But I only use my powers for good. And I suppose that, that's gaslighting. So maybe we're all horrible people. Let's move on.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I'm not a great liar. If you ask me to my face, as I say, I can't lie, but I'm a great emitter. I cannot tell people things. I cannot tell people things till the cows come home, until they ask me directly, and then I'll blurt it out. But again, and it's that thing of all of a sudden you'll be like, I haven't told somebody something because I know, it's not going to go down very well, and then you're like, oh, I told you that.
Of course I told you that.
I told you that. Yeah, everybody's done that.
That's damaging, right? That's often a little white lie to cover a track rather than actually creating someone damaging harm,
Yeah.
But I suppose then for that person who's then sitting there going, did they tell me that? I have an absolutely appalling memory, and worse so in the last few weeks. And I will ask my husband the same question multiple times, and he'll say, you've asked me that 2 minutes ago. And I'm thinking, did I? So even though, like, I mean, in that case, I don't think he's like gaslighting me. I think I am genuinely going batshit. But like,
you've had a baby. There are extenuating circumstances here. You have had a baby. You're allowed to have a baby. I do think it's an important distinction, though, isn't it? Because what we have to do here is, you know, when does it become gaslighting? At what point is it when it is a sustained campaign? Is it when it's been going on for years? Is it when the person, because yes, you know, every marriage, every relationship, every friendship has those moments where you've done that. But I personally wouldn't kind of deem that as gaslighting. I would just deem that as life. I think it's gaslighting if you're constantly doing it to somebody, and you're doing it to somebody to the point that not only are they doubting that you've told them things, or that you know you've had conversations with them, but they're then doubting conversations that they've had with other people. I don't know. What do you think, Joanne? Do you think it is all of it's gaslighting?
No. I think for me, gaslighting is very much that intent to control.
Yeah.
That I think that's sort of that difference. You know, telling a little, you know, oh, of course I told you I was going out tonight, haha. You know, you're not trying to control them in a negative way. I mean, you could be if you're doing that all the time, but you know, I think there's the intent behind it makes it different. Are you trying to cause harm? Are you trying to control?
And I think what you've done there very neatly is hit on the very problem with gaslighting, because you know if that's why it is so hard to pin down and so hard to define, because you know if somebody's punched their partner and they've got a black eye, there's no good intent behind that, and you've got a very physical thing that proves that it's happened. You know, you in a rape case, for example, you've got to prove that they intended to do it and that it happened. And so those two things are quite easily proven. There's a black eye and somebody that you can't hit somebody in a friendly way. Whereas with gaslighting, it's so nebulous, isn't it? And you can't, again, you could even backtrack on that actual thing itself and then say, well, no, I didn't tell them that. I didn't tell them that they were lying or that they've made it up. So it becomes a really, you know, it's a really hard thing to then quantify whether or not it's happening or somebody's had it done to them. And therefore it's really hard to prove in court.
Absolutely. I mean, even not just proving in court, proving to yourself. Like, I know countless people who I've spoken to and they've said, oh, you know, my partner did this, my partner said that. And I'm thinking that's gaslighting. And but to them, it's just part and parcel of life. And it's so difficult to pin down because, like you say, by its very nature, it makes you doubt yourself. And self-doubt and denial is an incredibly powerful feeling and tool. And if you are being told all the time that your instincts and thoughts and memory is incorrect, then how the hell would you know? It just creates absolute confusion. But I'm really glad that you asked what the difference is, because I have 11 signs from psychology today that Rachel's going to make me read out. Just hang on.
Come on, multitasking at its best.
Multitasking, right? Okay, so, I mean, there's the obvious things like, oh, they tell loads of lies, or they deny that they said something. But then it's the risk, the jeopardy that's involved in it. So they use ammunition, like they use your relationships, your family, your children, or whatever as ammunition. They use your self-worth as ammunition. So, you know, you're worthless, you're not, these kids are no good, or I'll take your family off you. It's insidious, it's gradual, it's slow burning, it takes time, and it's a chipping away of someone's personality and self-esteem. There's moments of positive reinforcement, as with a lot of domestic abuse. You think, well, why did they stay with them? And most domestic abuse victims, well, not most, but lots will say, well, you know, when it was good, it was really good, and he wasn't always like that, or she wasn't always like that, or, you know, at times like it was lovely and I just needed to get back to that. There's kind of reasons to stay. And also the other kind of not symptom but hallmark of it is, just like other forms of domestic abuse, the perpetrator tries to turn or isolate the victim from their family, or turn family against them, or turn them against their family, so that they're easier to control. But mainly it's the dismissiveness, it's questioning your sanity, it's telling people that you're a liar, so that if you then try and seek support from outside your circle, they think that you're bonkers, or you think you're bonkers. It is a kind of psychological chipping away of a long term that's got moments of like, you know, positiveness thrown in. But basically it's just isolating you from your family, like every form of control.
But it is, but also I think we need to remember as well that sometimes you can have gaslighting and coercive control in a relationship without it getting to that stage of, oh my goodness, now it's abuse. And it's still bad. Like, for example, I know relationships, which I'm not going to specify, they are like an older generation, but within my family. And it is, in this case, the man is constantly telling the woman, no, you're wrong. No, you've got that wrong. No, you remembered that. No, it didn't happen like that. No, it happened like this. He would never hit her. They would never have a kind of abusive, and nobody would ever look at them and say that's an abusive relationship. But it is a constant undermining of her sanity and her memory, to the point that she will now say, before she even starts talking, now I know I get everything wrong and I know I misremember everything. So it's really hard with gaslighting, and this is why I think it's dangerous, because people want to put it in that box of abuse, and I can't be gaslighting somebody, or we can't have a relationship that's got these factors in it, because that is an abusive relationship, and we are not in an abusive relationship, so we're okay. And I think that's why it's really important to stress with gaslighting. It can happen at work, it can happen with your friends. You know, I mean, Joanne, have you ever been gaslit by a friend?
I think so. I've been thinking, because I think we all find it hard to really grab this example. So the example that actually was for me is more in the workplace. I can't think with a friend. But as she was speaking, talking about friends, something popped into my mind I hadn't thought about for years. It was children trying to gaslight me as a child in this really weird way. So let me give you this example. It's really odd that it's just popped into my head. So I could have only been I was old enough to go to a roller disco by myself.
I love a roller skate, but I loved a roller disco.
Yeah. So I'm there with my friends, obviously not with them at the time, and there's this group of girls who are like, and they call me a completely different name. I can't remember what now, but they're like, hey, like, I'll just make up the name. I can't think of any of the girls. It's Sarah. They're like, hey, Sarah, it's us. And I was like, what? You know, it's us from like the other day, you know, we hung out, and I was like, what the hell's going on? Because I'm such a polite individual, that's just my nature. And they're being so like, as a child, you're going, well, they're showing all the signs of being my friends and being nice. But then I did have enough thought to go, oh, they're just taking the piss, aren't they?
Yeah.
And that's what they were doing. They were trying to do, but that's gaslighting. They were kind of like making me doubt myself, going, because I actually stood there for going, do I know these girls? Obviously, I've never seen them before in my life, but it made me feel, I mean, obviously, I remember this. I'm 41 now, but I remember that because it obviously made me feel crap. It made me feel a bit bullied and really embarrassed. But yeah, so that's not an example of a friend, but I hadn't thought about that for years until we started talking about it. But that's right, isn't it? They're trying to
this is the thing, I think, you know, when people say like, oh, you know, have you ever been gaslit by your friends? And I would say my answer would be no, because I don't have a lot of friends. The friends that I do have are very good friends, and they are my close friends, and they wouldn't do that. But I have definitely been gaslighted by people that I've known, or people that have wanted to be my friend, or that, you know, when you have those kind of brief friendships that pass in and out your life. I've definitely been gaslighted by people like that before. And yeah, so it's true. Hannah, have you ever been gaslighted in a friendship?
I don't know. I can't remember. I was just trying to think if I've ever gaslit you, Rachel, or if you've ever. You have gaslit me multiple fucking times.
So there was an occasion when we were children, and I used to do this to Hannah quite often, but we used to be mucking out the horses, and I made her close her eyes and like directed her towards a wall.
We were playing armies.
Yeah, you've got to kiss the wall. And then as soon as she'd done it, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you've done that. Do you not know that bricks give you amnesia? And I was like, if there's a chemical in bricks, and if you kiss them and you get it in your mouth, it gives you amnesia. And then I was like, what's your name? She was like, Hannah. I was like, no, that's not your name. What's my name? And I completely, like, she was, you were only about what, 7 or 8,
maybe, something like that.
Yeah, and I convinced her that she had lost all her memory and couldn't remember who anybody was. So again, that's kind of that sisterly behaviour, isn't it? That's not gaslighting.
Yeah, but you fucking did it so much, Rachel. Like the time that you just wore me down to the point where I did genuinely believe that you'd been to the Himalayas with Hugh Grant.
Yeah. Hugh Grant, yeah, I'd been to the Himalayas with Hugh Grant.
Yeah, how was that?
It was great, and we had a lovely time.
Well, Hannah knows all about it. Can tell us all about it.
We went skiing. You even told me like the colour ski suit that you wore. It was blue, apparently. I remember it because I remember thinking, surely this is bullshit.
Yeah,
but you just wore me down constantly.
Is this an interesting thing? Because is there a difference when you're children of that sort of make-believe, just playing around? Is there that blurred line between reality and fantasy that it's not seen as harmful? I mean, obviously you've not grown up into a sociopath, which according to the website I read, that being someone who gaslights is a sign of being a sociopath and a narcissist. So I mean, again, I remember there was, a friend, again, I was quite young, would convince me of the most unbelievable things. Completely. I packed my bags to leave because I thought there was this magical world I could go onto, and I just had to use my friend's mum's broomstick to get there. And I packed my bags believing it.
Brilliant. But this is it, isn't it? I mean, this is again, we come back to, this is why it is so insipid, because all children do that. As children, we lie, we make up stories, we convince our friends that something's happened or that something didn't happen. Even if it's like, you tell your friends that we snogged a boy when you didn't. It's make believe and it's fantasy and it's playing. And yes, it's being a bit manipulative, but I'm fairly sure that's a normal part of childhood. And then that kind of evolves into adulthood, and all of a sudden, obviously, doing everything you did as a child, as a grown-up, we know that's not good, but it's gaslighting, and then it's this thing. So anyway, we are supposed to be doing a kind of in the workplace session. So Joanne, you said you had an example of when you've been gaslighted in the workplace, so tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'll do my best, because I think it's an experience that it's probably still fresh for, anyway. We're not naming names.
Are you going to say that you doubt your own memory of it?
I doubt my own memory, yeah. But so an individual in a workplace, at the time we didn't have this language of gaslit, and it was that thing of, it was so insidious, and it was a pattern of such small things that you didn't think anything bad was being done to you until it escalated. So this individual then became in charge, and it was just an individual that you always had to be treading on eggshells, and they'd always make you doubt yourself. They'd make you doubt something had happened, and they had this way of drawing things out of you, so that they'd find out your weak points. So, if it was really important that you made your mum and dad proud, they'd pull on that when you're down.
Yes,
that kind of thing. And it wasn't personal to me. It was pretty much anyone and everyone. But when it got more personal to me and I recognized it, so I'll give a specific example because being vague is not helpful, but I recognized that they were forever twisting the truth about people to fit her narrative, and that when it started limiting people's career and affecting their confidence, I'd grown up quite a lot, and I was like, I'm not having this. And when she tried to do it to me, first of all, I started documenting it. Mm-hmm. And the particular example was, she wasn't happy with the way I'd done something, which actually wasn't a problem. She just didn't like the fact I didn't check it with her. And she went, well, it's very a favourite phrase. It's career limiting. I was like, all right, okay. In what way? Oh, well, I told, and then named some executives, and they think that's terrible or something. And I was like, okay. One is called bullshit on it, but at the same time was like, well, what happens if this is the truth? So I just decided to bravely ask the executives. I got them on the phone and just said, apparently I've done something wrong that you're not very happy with. Can you tell me how to improve? And they were like, no, we never said that. And I was like, well, I was told. And that became, the beginning of the end for that. But yes. It didn't recognise, because it was little things you just couldn't put your finger on all the time.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? That's exactly the danger of it. It is little things, and by the very fact that you have been made to doubt your own sanity, you then can't pin down that it's actually happening. Because if, you're saying, I thought this happened, and somebody said, no, it didn't happen like that, then you're like, well, now I'm not on enough, I'm not on firm enough ground to fight this case, to fight, to stand my corner and fight it. Same with oh, well, I did tell you. It's not one of those things that you can prove and say you absolutely didn't, because how can you ever do that? And this is why it is so dangerous in the workplace, I think. I mean, we've mentioned kind of how it's becoming more known in general culture and population, and I think this is why people are now being able to pick up on it in the workplace, because it is that little thing of, well, I did send you, I did tell you in an email, or, I did tell you about this meeting, or I did speak to somebody else about this assignment, and they said, And sometimes, like, with your example, John, you can absolutely prove that, because you can go one step above and say, did you have this conversation? And then you've got corroborating evidence. But it's damaging and it's dangerous, isn't it? I know.
And also recognising to start with that there's a lie at the root of it. Because then it made you think, how many times have I just taken her word for it?
Yes.
It was only my gut, because it got so bad and I think it was spiraling out of control, that I recognised, like a year or two ago, I might have just gone, oh God, my name's mud now with the top executives. That's but there was enough there that I was picking up on it. Otherwise, I would have just let it go and just believed it.
And that's the thing as well, isn't it? That confidence is such a massive part of this. Yeah. You've got to have enough confidence and enough self-belief to be able to question it. If you are, and it comes down to positions of power. If it is somebody who is above you, who you respect, or who has a position of power, and they are telling you things, you believe them, and you wouldn't go and question that, would you? Unless, like you say, you start to recognize it. And you have to be quite self-aware and confident to be able to do that in the first place.
But I think that's the whole point of victimization, isn't it? I think not to victim blame in the slightest, but narcissists and manipulators and bullies and the sorts of people that will do this will pick out the people that they know won't fight back, or won't question it, or will accept it and will bend and yield to it. And that's part of the skill. And if someone is systematically gaslighting people throughout a company, I would say they're probably pretty high on the psychopathy scale.
I don't know. I mean, are they, or are they just also, there's an element of incompetence, isn't there? I mean, I used to have a boss quite a few years ago, and she was constantly just, she wasn't very good, and she was obviously getting flack from higher up. But she would blame the people below her instead of saying, no, fair cop, we didn't do that. She'd be like, well, I told Rachel to do that, and Rachel is the one who hasn't done it. And just throwing people under the bus. I mean, is that gaslighting?
It depends if that individual who's been thrown under the bus feels like it was their fault.
Yeah.
And I think back to that thing about picking off maybe the weakest or whatever. I think there's a different way to think about it. I think they just hone in. Your weakness can be your strength. So, for example, knowing that you're career hungry, I'm going to chip away at that insecurity. Like, Joe really wants to get ahead, so I'm going to hit her where it hurts. She's really confident in all these, but I'm going to hit her where it hurts. You know what I mean? Like, it then does. But the whole point of gaslighting, not the whole point, but it chips away at your sense of self, your sense of self-confidence. So you could start off as an incredibly confident individual, but they just know how to they wiggle the way to find something. Everyone has a vulnerability. Everyone has something that can affect them. And that's what sort of makes them sort of master manipulators. And it was really odd reading through this stuff because all we called this individual was a bully. But it was really hard because when you say bully, like you say domestic abuser, bully, you imagine someone like yelling at you in your face, calling you a stupid cow. But because that wasn't what was happening, it was really hard to even speak to HR about it because they're like, well, bullying, that's not bullying.
Yes.
But HR policies have come a long way as well to be very broad about what bullying can encompass as well.
Yes, and I think that is a good thing. Obviously, it's a good thing, but you're absolutely right. It is, again, it's back to that thing of it's not a thing. It's not a one thing that you can put your finger on and say this person has done something wrong. And it can be really, they could be doing it in a really nice way. You could be gaslighting someone in the most helpful way possible. You know, let's have a one-to-one. Let's try and make it better. You know, let's talk through all of these issues that you're having where you're not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, even though I've told you to. And they could be the most caring. They could look like the most caring manager or the most caring boss on the team. And actually, like you say, they're just chipping away at you. And it's really hard then to convince, unless there other people are also having this done to them, it's really hard to convince people that actually that is bullying.
Yeah. And bullying's not got a proper legal definition, has it? Like, again, that is just really difficult. It's really insipid. Not insipid. Yeah. What do I mean?
Insidious.
No, like hard to pinpoint, like vaporous.
Vague. Anyway,
moving on. I think what's really interesting though is like I do feel like gaslighting has come around at the perfect time because we are an absolute post-truth generation, and like you see governments and politicians gaslighting nations and facets of society all the time. Even though there's evidence to the contrary, they will say, I never said that. I didn't say that. No one did that.
Yeah, every 5 minutes.
Trump does it all the time, doesn't he? There's, like, he tweets something one week and then next week he denies ever saying it, and it's #fake news. And everyone that possibly believes that he did say it in the first place is a dickhead and don't know what they're talking about, and libtards and all this nonsense. But people believe it. And I think it's interesting that despite evidence to the contrary, people are willing to believe whatever they want. I don't know if they even want to believe it. Whatever the most recent thing they're being told is, they will believe it, or they will shun their instinctive knowledge of the truth.
And shown evidence. I mean, it happened. You see it happening. I mean, apparently it happened on Love Island last year. I don't watch Love Island, but apparently between Joe and Lucy, whoever the hell they are, it was happening on Love Island. It's happening all the time. It happens in soaps and stuff. But you're absolutely right in politics. And you know, people will say, "Oh, stop being a snowflake. You know, stop being so affected by stuff." Blah 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 blah. But there is actual evidence. I mean, I've been watching, you can judge me all you like for this, I've been watching Married at First Sight Australia recently.
Yeah.
No different from me.
I've got a bit obsessed with that. But yeah, so we've been watching that, and so many times on that, there are characters, well, I say characters, they're real life people, aren't they? But there are people on there, and they'll be like, no, I didn't say that. That's not what happened. And then they'll play the clip of them saying it. And even then, they'll show it to them at the end and say, well, you did that. Well, that's not what I meant. No, you know, you've taken it out of context, blah, blah. And you see it time and again, like even with Trump, as far as Twitter, people will pull up tweets from like 2 years ago and say, this is what you said. In fact, there's quite a few sort of occasions where I've seen that happening, like this is Tory policy and this is a tweet from a Tory party member 2 years ago saying that they were never going to have this policy, or here it is as a Labour policy or something. Time and time again, despite evidence to the contrary, you know, it comes up and people like you said believe it or discount the contrary evidence. I mean, so just like, you know, so that people kind of can understand. There was a meme which I shared a few years ago, and I share it periodically, so I will share it again after this session. But it talks about what are the things that you might hear if you are being gaslighted, and it is things like, you know, no, I didn't say that. No, you've made that up. You're a liar. You know, all the things that, as we say, that make you doubt your own sanity. But it's also then doubting you to other people, isn't it? So they can then go back to other people and say, oh, she's always making stuff up. Or, oh, he's absolutely batshit. He forgets everything all the time. And it's bringing other people into that kind of belief as well, isn't it? Again,
absolutely. Because if everybody around you is saying, oh, you're so forgetful, or well, you know, she does tell porkies, then it's so difficult to go to someone and say, I think that they're gaslighting me, because they'd say, no, it's you. It's you.
Also, I hope this is not too off point and not based up with hard facts, but there is something
very much, Joanne.
No such thing in this.
But there's that thing about altered memories, that you can actually alter someone's memory if enough people tell you it happened. You take it on as your own memory. Yeah. So I wonder if that's something to do with it as well. I think there was actually a psychological study about it.
Yeah,
like the Mandela effect.
The Mandela effect. Right. There is that. Well, that's misremembering things. So that's when you think something's happened, and lots of people think that something's happened, because apparently loads of people remember Nelson Mandela dying in the 80s.
Oh yeah.
And then say it, you know, oh, didn't Mandela die in the 80s?
This is a different thing. This was groups of people deciding to tell an individual that an event happened and making them believe it. They start off going, no, I don't. It was I think it was like a harmless example. It was like, I don't remember going away that weekend when we were at uni. Did we? Did we really go away to Amsterdam? I don't know. Oh yeah, remember that happened, this happened, this happened. And then after a while, the individual's like, oh yeah, we had a great time that weekend in Amsterdam. And it's completely been implanted into them. They've taken it on as their own. So when it comes to gaslighting, you start to believe it. And I think there might be even something chemical in our brains that if we're told it enough, we take it on as a memory.
It is. I mean, I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and they were talking about false confessions. And the woman who does the podcast, she's a psychologist, and her PhD was in false confession. So she did a whole series of experiments to see how easy it was to implant these false memories into people's brains. And she said it literally took kind of 2 or 3 sessions of saying, do you not remember when this happened? Do you not remember it? And then they would confess to horrendous things that they hadn't done, because that was there. And that is exactly how memory works. It's not a linear, a definitive thing that happened and you remember it. It's made up of a composite of so many things around you. So it's absolutely true. If enough people are saying, you know, oh, you always misremember things, or you are always forgetting everything, that becomes your truth. Like I said, that, you know, the relationship I know, that is what she will start sentences with. I know I always get everything wrong, but this is what I think happened. And you're like, you're doubting so much because you're just constantly being told that. And that can happen in the workplace, and between friendships, and between relationships, and from men to women and women to men. And, you know, it is dangerous, isn't it? Do you think, actually, though, we do this to children as well, don't we? When we're like, oh yeah, Father Christmas is coming. Do you remember that Christmas? I have a really clear memory of seeing Father Christmas as a child, which I've obviously made up, and then I've obviously told somebody, and it's kind of been implanted as a memory. But I remember
a garden centre.
No, I mean, like, I remember waking up on Christmas Eve in the middle of the night and seeing Father Christmas filling my stocking at the end of my bed.
Oh, like, really
what are you trying to say? Didn't happen?
Oh yeah, no, it's completely possible. Yeah, I don't think she's old enough to comprehend Father Christmas yet, Hannah. I think it's all right.
No, I'm thinking about me. What do you mean?
Right,
I think, like, we do it. I think doing it to children is, again, phasing out. I do think this is a generational thing that will become less acceptable. I know the couple that you're talking about, Rachel, and like you say, nobody would look at them and think that's abusive, but you know, I do stand there and think, Christ, this is really abusive. This is not healthy. And I think just like gaslighting children, I think it will phase out. And I think it's important that we kind of remember that gaslighting is malicious and designed as a form of control, and is there to make people more submissive. And we don't do that to children, well, unless you're an arsehole and you're abusive. Like, not many parents do that as a form of abuse to their child. Yeah, but it's really interesting listening to you two talk, because I'm sitting here thinking I have done a lot of that. I must be a really fucking horrible person. Maybe I am a narcissist, and wouldn't you be if you were me?
Okay, so we have only got a couple of minutes left. So, I know we've only kind of briefly touched upon the workplace, and we've kind of mostly talked about gaslighting in other relationships there. But how first of all, how do we keep an eye out for this now in the workplace? How do we make sure people are aware of it, and how do we stop it? Joanne, you mentioned that HR policies are getting better. Is it purely a case of making sure those policies are in place, or do you think we need to go, people need to have sessions in workplaces where they talk about, this is what it is, and this is what you look out for, and if you see somebody say this to your friend, you tell somebody about it?
I think raising awareness is always a good way, and the more awareness, the more likely you can then to call it out. So whether it's specific to gaslighting or with any kind of inappropriate behavior in the workplace, just to flag it all up, that it doesn't need to be the traditional thing of, whether you're being sexually harassed, someone's hand up your skirt by the photocopier, it's actually sexual harassment can just be words, but they're more than words. It's that whole encompassing thing, how words can affect people's mental health. And I think it's awareness of your colleagues, and whether you see it happening to someone else. I think if you recognize it, I think you should either call it out, check in with that person. I think we have a responsibility for that. And if you feel like it's happening to yourself, is to check in with someone you absolutely trust and share. So it can be, it's just like, oh, well, my boss keeps telling me I'm, doing this wrong, that wrong. What do you think? I think that's really important. And if you have a good relationship with your HR, which, again, I'm a big advocate of HR getting more involved and being more personable, so that you can have that relationship, so you can actually go and say, I think this is happening. But document things, and that was my experience. Document actual examples when you're aware of them, and it becomes harder and harder. Facing your gaslighter, that's almost the wrong thing to do, because they'll just deny it and come up with more lies. But getting some hard facts that you can check out, like that example I gave. Yeah. But that can sometimes be a bit further down the line. You've got to recognize it first. So awareness first and foremost.
I think as well, it is hard for people, isn't it? Because sometimes you're trying to document something that didn't happen. So, like I say, sometimes you can't prove that somebody didn't tell you something, or you can't prove that somebody did. So sometimes that's again, we come back to that problem. Sometimes it can have been going on for years before you realize, actually, this is what this is. But you're absolutely right. Write things down. If somebody is consistently telling you that you are doing something wrong, or you are not doing something that you should have done, or they've told you something to the point that you're starting to doubt yourself, and that's the key, isn't it? When you start doubting yourself, that's a sign that something's not right. Hannah, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think as a business owner or leadership in a business, you should be, I think this is one of the main it's a massive benefit of a flat hierarchical structure, or a flat structure, where everyone is able to speak to everybody else in the company. Because, Joanne, if you hadn't been able to go to the execs and say, are you annoyed at me? You kind of, did I do something wrong? Then this woman would never have been kind of caught out, perhaps, or would have got away with it for a lot longer. And if you've got a kind of administrator, or someone lower down the structure, would they then have the gumption or the ability be allowed to go and speak to the execs? I've worked in places where if you went and spoke to senior management, you got told off, you were kind of reprimanded for it, and because you should have followed the chain of command.
But that's where that in itself is damaging, and that's why it was used to me, because they didn't believe I'd go above, because I'd been drilled into me. Actually, because the example was, you didn't check it with me, so now you've done something wrong. It was one of those moments. Yeah, I got a bit more senior at that point and started to build my own relationships. But there becomes a point that's got, someone in the company that you can trust to go to. And in this particular example, it was happening across the board. And the reason why I felt confident, I had lots of other examples that other people had brought to me because they were too frightened to take them further. Yeah. So it's really hard, I think, in those structures though, where, like you say, but I just had to throw something out there because couldn't let it go on any longer, not just for myself.
Yeah, you are exactly right. And having a flat structure is easier in a smaller company, and it's harder in a bigger company. But again, it is that very hierarchy that enables it to happen in the first place, because you feel inferior anyway, because you're at the bottom of the pile.
Yeah, I think in large companies where hierarchy is almost unavoidable, then it's open communication, it's open channels, it's doors not shut, literal doors open.
Regular. Have a HR person, make sure you speak to. There's got to be somebody you can tell, hasn't there?
Yeah, exactly. Have some sort of open communication, regular team meetings, visible management, visible HR, approachable HR. Because I think often in lots of large companies, HR are kind of squirreled away, and you only go to them if there's something wrong or if you're in trouble. And it's really damaging actually to the culture of the business.
And I think as a director as well, you have to be responsible. If it's your company, you keep your eyes out for it. If you know that there is somebody who behaves like this to people lower down, or even if they try it, if that's just a behavior trait for them, don't put up with it. Don't promote them because they're easier to promote and get rid of. Deal with it, because it is damaging in all directions, isn't it? Yeah. We've gone way over time, girls, way over time, and still there's loads of stuff that we could have talked about with gaslighting. But thank you so much to both of you. Thank you to Aubrey, a second Facebook Live. Thank you to Joanne for standing in for Marisha. She will be back next week, but Joanne, you will no doubt be on somewhere in the future. So thank you very much, both of you. Let's what we're doing now.